Hey guys, it's Clever Techie, and in this video we're going to cover PHP data types and variable handling functions. So, in PHP, variable data types can be broken down in three different categories: scalar, composite, and special. Okay, so the scalar is a single unit of data, and this includes variables like string, which is text, integer, which is a whole number, float, which is a fractional number, and boolean, which is a 0 or a 1, and it could also be represented as true for 1 or false for 0. Next we got composite, which is an array or an object, and the array basically holds multiple values like you see here, separated by the comma. And the object refers to the instance of the class. So if we have a class named movie, for example, we can then say object equals new keyword and then the class name, and that will create the object instance of that class. So that's how we create an object data type. Finally, we have a special, and under special we have a null, which is basically means nothing or no value at all. And another one is a resource, which can hold special values like database connections, open files, etc. So these are the most common data types you're going to encounter in PHP. Now let's actually create some of these variables, and now we can play around with them. So the first one I'm going to define is a string variable, and so this is just going to be information about a Matrix movie. I think it's a good way to demonstrate all kinds of different data types in PHP. So this one is going to be float. I'm going to define awesome equals true. That is a boolean. And then I'm going to create an array. And this one is going to be an associative array. And it's going to have actor names and the roles they played in the movie. And so I'm just going to put a couple of them in here. Morpheus, Carrie Ann, okay, that's enough. So that's going to be our associative array, and data type is going to be array. Then I'm going to create a class movie and create an object matrix using the new keyword followed by the class name, which is a movie, and that's gonna create the object instance of the class. And let's define a null one. And finally, let's define a resource, and this one is gonna refer to the open file. Just gonna specify the directory where this text file is located. It can be any text file. And so this one is going to become a resource. Okay, now let's go ahead and cover some of the variable handling functions. And the reason I want to show you this is because there's a lot of variable functions or variable handling functions in PHP which give you all kinds of information about data types and other information about the variables. And as you can see, the first one is a get type, and it does exactly what it says. It gets the data type of the variable. Then we have a isSet, which checks if the variable has been initialized. Onset destroys the variable, and then you can just download this little cheat sheet or table here and just check out all of these other variables and play around with the variables that we have just defined. But I'm going to create a loop now, and I'm going to use getType variable to get the information about all the variables that we have just created to get the data type. But before I do that, I'm actually going to define a new variable, and it's going to hold all these variables in it using an array. So I'm going to define a variable named data, and then I'm going to say array, and I'm just going to put all these variable names inside of this array. And then we're going to use a for loop to loop through all these variables inside of the data array. And I'm going to use the getType function to get the data type of these variables. Okay, so let's create a for loop. And I'm gonna use a function named count to count how many elements are inside the array, so we know when to stop looping. And then I'm gonna echo out and use the get data function, I think. Yep. Oh, get type. And then I'm just gonna say data I to get to the variable. And now let's go ahead and see what happens. Gonna open up the browser here real fast. Local navigate to PHP data types. Okay, so it's printing out all data types. Let me just use a BR HTML tag so we can read it a little easier. Okay, so it's printing out all the data types of those variables. As you can see, the first one is a string, which is this variable here, the matrix. Second one is an integer, which is the release here. And it's got all the information about all the other variables that we've defined. And you can see that it's getting the right type of data type of those variables. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the data types. And you can go ahead and play around with all these other functions. And I'm just going to demonstrate a couple of them right now. Just going to say if, for example, is array. So that's going to check if the data type of the variable is an array. And if it is, it's just going to print out the array data using a printr function. And then another one, let's say else if is numeric, or I'm just going to say if is numeric. So that's going to check if the data type is a number. I'm going to say something like numeric value detected, and then print out the actual variable information or the value of the variable. And I'm going to also include the BR tag at the end so it's easier to read. Okay, so let's see what happens now. Let's go ahead and go back to the output. And now as it's looping, it's detecting the integer, and then it's saying numeric value detected because it's a number, and it's printing the value of the variable. And then the float one is also numeric, so it's also detecting that. And then it's also detected the associative array, and then it printed the whole thing out here. So you can see how you can play around with all these function names and get a bunch of information from the variables. var underscore dump is a really useful one because it provides additional information about the variable. And the empty one is a very useful one because it checks if the variable exists or if it is null. You can use unset to basically destroy the variable, or unset a key from the array. And you can check for all kinds of different data types, and it's really useful to do that while programming. So go ahead and play around with these, download this cheat sheet, and I hope this video has been useful for you guys. And if it was, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Clever Techie out.